All right, joined by a special guest here in this video. Uh, those of you who don't know, this is my dad here. And tell what your experience is with emergency ambulance and whatever else.
Well, I've been involved in first aid type work and ambulance work since I was 16 years old. And I'm now in my upper 70s. So I've been at it for quite a while, but I haven't been in active duty lately. But for about 35 years, I was an active member on ambulance work and rescue and that type thing. And I've seen it all, believe me. That's pretty much where my background is.
And what, paramedic, EMT, what?
Yeah, paramedic. No, EMT, I'm sorry. Paramedic is a step above us. But anyhow, yeah.
Okay. So you went to how many accidents probably? Just a rough estimate?
I never began to count.
More than two.
Yeah. I've been in situations where ambulance was involved over 1,200 times in my career. I say over that because I don't have an exact number, but it was many years of running ambulance, and I've seen it all. Believe me.
And you would have been there too throughout many of the years where the seatbelt was kind of developing. I hate to say evolving, but a lot of the early cars back when you would have first got started probably didn't have much in the way of seatbelts.
No.
Up until the modern ones where you get in and you have no choice, it belts you in whether you want to be or not.
Right, exactly.
So you got to see that whole range of it then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the question comes up, which has happened in numerous videos. People see I don't wear a seatbelt, and a big part of that reason is right here, my dad's experience in the ambulance service, in emergency services, and actually seeing that are there times when actually people have been killed because they were wearing seatbelts
and injured, killed and injured.
But you
with
actually
a seatbelt.
You have seen actual accidents where they were killed because of the seatbelt. Could you explain to people how that happens?
A good case history of that kind of a thing that I've seen is when we arrive in the ambulance and a car is laying on its side or on its roof or just sitting there. And somebody, we talk to the patient inside, they say, I can't get out, I'm trapped. I can't get out and I smell gasoline and I'm afraid there's going to be a fire. Obviously anybody would be in a case like that. But the problem is, usually it's not a case of being caught by a fire or something like that. It's something that they're in shock. Whenever they're in a serious accident, they always go into some degree of shock. Some are worse than others. Some are a lot, squeamish about every little thing. And I'm dying. I'm going to be in a fire. Mm-hmm. And we realize the fact that is not necessarily the case. In a lot of cases, I'll give you a prime example. When a car is laying on its side and somebody's laying in there and they're trying to get loose and they're saying, I'm trapped, I can't get out, and I smell smoke and I'm going to have a problem here pretty soon. And we reach in and we say, you're not quick to move people because you don't know their injury situation, a back, neck, whatever the case may be. But if they look like they are movable, we just reach in and get the release on the seatbelt, and they're not trapped. The seatbelt has them tied down. And all we got to do is push release, open the belt, bring them outside. The car may blow up, it may do whatever, doesn't matter.
Were there ever times when you had to cut the seatbelt off?
We have a tool, probably about 1.5 feet long. It's just a rod, and then the end of it has a knife, a curved knife, that yes, we can get in there and actually tear the seat belt and pull them out. If we can't get them any other way, we use that as a last resort. Mm-hmm. And they did work. So there is a tool in each ambulance. There was then, and I don't know if they still are because I haven't been in it for a while, but that's been a tool in an ambulance for many years, and it worked.
Yeah, but the important point to make here is those were the experiences where you got there and the person was still alive. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But you would actually arrive at the scene where the person had died in the accident because they couldn't get out.
Right. And
it was because they go into shock because of the accident. and they panic, and the seatbelt is keeping them in.
Right. And
So-
they think this is it, and I'm dying.
But I'm saying that the car actually does explode or whatever else,
And you
they
can't.
they
Yeah.
can't get out because of that seatbelt.
Right. And if they knew better and they realized the fact it's only shocking them in, and I should be able to push a seatbelt and go out through a window or out through the whatever. Well, the rescue people come in with they have jaws that they open up stuff and they get you out. But I'm not talking about that. That's a different situation. There you do need very professional tooling to get them out. And but in a case like we're talking about, this is like mostly just a normal crash where there is a seatbelt involved, but they are not hurt to the point of the car's going to blow up and they're going to die there. It's something we just pull in, loosen them up, pull them out, put them in the litter, take them to the hospital.
But had they not been wearing a seatbelt, what would have happened if you? I'll say it this way: did you ever pull into an accident where somebody was upside down with no seatbelt on?
Yeah. Yes. And usually, if they're not badly injured, back or neck or some kind of a real severe injury, a lot of times they'll realize the fact that, hey, maybe I can get out of here. So they'll get a hold of the car latch, open the door, or crawl out of a broken window and get out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have a belt, and they saved themselves as a result.
Yeah.
But that may happen before we arrive, and if that's the case. Good.
They're in better shape.
Much better shape.
How about broadside? Collision
Oh,
on
boy.
the broadside. What if they're belted in? Is that a?
That's one of my biggest hang-ups, and I think it'll make sense when I tell you. Probably around 60 to 70% of crashes are broadside. Cars go to pull up to an intersection, and the light changes to green, and they go to take off, and the car comes the other way. Ignored the red light that they were supposed to stop, and they come through and broadside you. Mm-hmm. Serious condition. That's what I'm saying. 60 to 70% of real serious accidents are broadside accidents. And it's very, very nasty because you're crushed. If you have a seatbelt on, it holds you there. And we have a term in ambulance called the crush zone. You're in your seat and you can't move because your seat has you trapped. If you didn't have a belt on, you'd fly across to the other side. Case in point, I can tell you, my own wife has a brother that was in an accident like that. He was driving a car and he came to this intersection and he went to pull out, and this car broadsided him big time. And he flew across the other side of the car and almost went out through the door. But if he'd had a seatbelt on, he'd have been in the crush zone dead. And that's what I'm talking about. The broadside crashes, 60 to 70% of them are broadside crashes. And that's why I won't even consider wearing a seatbelt. Mm-hmm. It's not my fault that a guy comes through a light and he hits me broadside. And that's why I say it's important to realize the fact that it's not always your fault. But if you have a seatbelt on, you're trapped by the belt.
Mm-hmm. What about if you have a head-on collision? In other words, you're the one that hits something. Does a seatbelt save you in that situation?
A seatbelt then might help. It might assist if you had one on. But even there, depending on the exact angle that you're hit, again, it could, you could fly and hit the windshield or the dashboard or whatever, and a seatbelt may complicate that situation. It's hard to explain how that works, but a seatbelt can make it a bad situation, even in a head-on crash.
Well,
because one of the major things with that is, if you're in that kind of a crash and the seatbelt stops you, guess what your head's going to do? And guess what's going to happen to your neck? You end up having a very, very severe neck break or something like that from the belts, with the belts on. So to me, any kind of a situation involving seatbelts, your chances of making it are really, really
not very good.
Not very good is correct.
Well, you actually had a situation years ago where you actually were not wearing a seatbelt and were in a kind of a head-on collision, and you actually took the windshield out with
Yeah.
there, didn't you?
Yeah.
I remember it, the big cut on your forehead and everything else.
Well,
And you survived.
you know what the situation was there? We were in this accident. My wife and I were driving up, and all of a sudden this pickup truck in front of us put his his right turn signal on. So we went to go around him on the left, and he turned in front of us. And when we collided, we had to call the police. The injuries weren't severe. I had a gash in my forehead from hitting the windshield or something. But the state policeman coming down the road, we saw him coming. We knew he'd be there soon. They make good time when there's an accident. State police show up quick. He was coming down the road, and for some reason I looked at him. I looked at him coming, and I realized the fact that he wasn't wearing a belt. And he came to the scene, got out, and he has his clipboard and tablet and all that stuff there, and he says, "Did you have your seatbelt on?" And I said, "No." He said, "Okay, I'll have to write that." And I said, "No, wait a minute. Did you have your seatbelt on when you were coming down the road? I was looking at you, and I didn't see you release anything, and you got out of the car and came over." I said, "Do you believe in seatbelts?" He said, "I'll be very honest with you. No." That's a state policeman talking.
Mm-hmm.
And he don't believe on them. I put an article in the paper some time back about seatbelts. I got calls from doctors, from police, from different people saying, "We totally agree with you. Seatbelts do not always save lives like they say on commercials. Seatbelts save lives, yeah, in some cases, but very rare. And seatbelts kill people and injure people severely. So to make it a law that you have to wear it, to me, is absolutely absurd.
Mm-hmm.
You should have the choice of, do I want to wear a seatbelt or don't I? If you ever see me coming down the street, you will not see a belt on me at all. And I'm not saying yay me, I'm saying I've been around it long enough to realize the fact that they do not save lives. They kill people, they injure people, and yes, once in a while they'll save a life. But the percentage is so far off as far as saving people than hurting people and killing people.
Yep. I totally agree with that. So, I'm going to read some scripture here real quickly. Because I know a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter what you think, it doesn't matter what you feel because it's the law. And if you're a Christian, you have to follow the law. Let's look at what the Bible says about that. Romans chapter 13, verse 1. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God, the powers that be are ordained of God. Does that include police officers? Yes, absolutely. But keep reading. A lot of preachers don't do this. They'll just stop at verse 2 or 3 or whatever. Keep reading. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. Verse 3. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same, for he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. All right? Not wearing a seatbelt is not evil. Okay? That's not an evil work. You're not hurting anybody. It's a matter of personal liberty.
That should be the choice of the person.
If he says, I don't want to wear a seatbelt, that's his right. He isn't going to hurt anybody but himself if it goes wrong. And it's always should have been wearing a seatbelt or whatever else. It's a matter of personal liberty. And when the government steps in, they're overstepping their bounds. They're only supposed to be there to judge evil works. That's the whole thing. So somebody comes out and they say you have to be subservient to the government and always wear your seatbelt because the government said so. No, you have to bring common sense into the equation and say, hey, the government's telling me to do something with my body. That's a problem. All right? And I will say helmet laws. We'll get on that subject here in just a minute. Here, as you know, not just a minute. We're getting it on right now. Helmet laws. Okay? I personally think if some guy doesn't want to wear a helmet, well, okay, that's up to him. But, have you ever seen an accident where you looked and said, boy, it's a shame they were wearing a helmet? You know? I have never heard of a guy that said, "Oh, I wish I wouldn't have been wearing a helmet when I wrecked my motorcycle." You know, every time you wreck a motorcycle, your helmet's going to help you. You know, so to me, the motorcycle helmet law thing, you know, again, it's a personal matter there if they want to wear it or not. But a helmet makes a lot more sense than a seatbelt.
But the government says you don't have to wear a helmet, but when you don't have one on, your head becomes the helmet when you're in a crash. Mm-hmm. And guess what happens to your head when you have a... Motorcycles aren't going around at 15 miles an hour. A lot of them are going around 60, 80, 70, 80 mile an hour doing their thing. And these guys look like, well, it doesn't matter what they look like. But anyhow, when they're in an accident, we pull in, we go, didn't you have a helmet? No, And a lot of times they die because they didn't have a helmet. But the government doesn't come down on the helmet law. They have this seatbelt thing for cars because I think there's a degree of government, money involved with the car companies to put seatbelts in every car, and then you have to wear them every time you're out. Mm-hmm. Huh? Yeah. Is the seatbelt and the helmet thing different? No, it's the same thing. But why do they let helmets okay? Guys riding a cycle, and a seatbelt, if you're not wearing it, they arrest you. I don't understand that. Yeah. We who have seen the results of it realize the fact that law is absolutely absurd, the seatbelt law. You have a right to say, no, I don't want to wear it. And in my case, I don't. And if you ever see me coming down the road, you will not see a seatbelt on me for that reason. But now, I've seen so many where they do more harm than good.
Mm-hmm. Would it make sense to put seatbelts on motorcycles? There's a question.
I won't go there.
But think about that. It would be absurd. People would say that's crazy. It's nuts. You wouldn't be strapped to a motorcycle if it wrecked. Well, you're strapped inside a car when it wrecks.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, again, I would say a motorcycle. If you're wearing a helmet, 100% of the time the helmet's going to protect you. Even if you're backing around in a parking lot and you lose your balance and you go over and whack your head into the pavement and you're not even going down the road, you're just in the parking lot and you bang your head, the helmet protected you, okay? Seat belts, it's not 100% guaranteed. Even if you're pro seatbelt, even if you're a total devotee and you got to follow the law there, whatever, you have to admit that there are some arguments against seatbelts. It's not 100%. So to make it into a law is wrong, just as simple as that.
And that guy that quizzed me a couple times on seatbelts, what do you think? You're an ambulance man. One thing I can only say to a person that is strong on that type thing is, without a seatbelt, you can live. With a seatbelt, you can live. But the percentage of severe accidents with a seatbelt keeping you strapped in and your car's rolled over or something, you smell gas, it explodes and you have no way to get out. And you could have if you didn't even have a seatbelt on, or you could have somehow, but you're in shock and you don't know that. And you try to get out and you can't. You think you're strapped in, you're trapped, but it's only your seatbelt. And that's wrong. That is absolutely wrong. But I think a person should have that right without saying seatbelts save lives, which is just a silly little statement. Seatbelts can kill. Seatbelts can injure. Seatbelts can trap people in. And like I said, in the case of my wife's brother, he would have been killed. He wouldn't be here today if he had his seatbelts on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, I think that's going to be it for this video. Make up your own mind. Think independently. Don't just go along with, it's a law, so I have to do it and whatever else. When it's a law that involves you, your body, especially if you're saved, if you're a Christian, your body belongs to God. You're bought with a price, and nobody has a right to come in, no secular government has a right to come in and tell you what to do to keep your body safe. All right, that's where I have a big disagreement with the whole thing. So that is...
Well, thanks for your time, and I appreciate you listening. Whether or not you agree is up to you. Whether or not you have a seatbelt accident, you might see what I'm talking about. I hope not. Okay, that's it for me.
All right. Thank you for watching.